Dinner went south real quick when Mom slid an envelope over to my sister. You guessed it, a cool $150,000 for her shiny new house. Dad, unfazed, slammed my status to the wall like it was a trophy on display. You're the failure. We invest in winners. Silence fell like a brick. Forks froze mid-bite, and smiles shattered. I didn't bother with tears, I just neatly folded my napkin, walked out, and put that chapter behind me. That evening, rather than begging for love or fairness, I decided to kickstart something amazing. Little did they know that 2 years later, they'd get a hot surprise. My sister zoomed past my property and screeched into the phone, "Dad, you have to get here now." If only they had seen that coming. Ah, sweet revenge brewed with a side of triumph, and I was ready to serve it up. Reflecting on my childhood, I giggle thinking about when I built a suspension bridge out of drinking straws and wires for the state science fair. Picture this, a bridge that held a textbook. Winning first place was a rush, especially when I stood there, scouting the audience for my parents. Spoiler, they were MIA, busy hyping up Jessica at her beauty pageant in Denver. I accepted a medal that glimmered in my hand, the warmth of pride squashed by Dad's distracted glance and his muttering "strange girl." Ouch. The silence that followed was a real slap in the face. You see, love in my family seemed tied to a ledger, all sweet nothings balanced against our accomplishments. My sister, the golden child, basked in praises and endless second chances, while I was the backup plan, the one they took for granted. I worked late to fund my education while they tossed Jessica's tuition around like pocket change. After graduation, my proud structural engineer photos landed in Dad's lap only to receive crickets in return. "You still renting?" Meanwhile, they were trapped in Jessica's success story. I kept hoping they'd change their narrative, that one day, my accomplishments would outshine Jessica's. But the "invest in winners" remark shattered that wish. Something in me dimmed, and I learned to differentiate between destructive silence and the kind that empowers you. I packed my bags, kissed Colorado Springs goodbye, and made my way to Denver with a mantra: if they couldn't see my worth, I would construct it piece by piece until it loomed like a skyline. Then came March, the grey morning where the world felt hungover, and my job decided to bid adieu. Despite the company's struggles, I thought I had secured my role, hard work and overtime in my pocket. But as the director read the layoff list, my name popped up, clean and final. The weight of it hit me as I walked out, termination letter in hand, standing in the snow, blasting cold that matched my disbelief. In that moment of frozen contemplation, I wondered, how many times can one rebuild from scratch? That night, I found myself glued to the window of my apartment, watching city lights flicker like fireflies. The silence inside felt more like an unwelcome guest weighing me down than a cozy companion. I took a deep breath and checked the Bennett family group chat. Scrolling through, I stumbled upon a picture of Jessica grinning widely in front of her brand new house, champagne in hand, with our parents radiating pride beside her. The caption read, "So proud of our youngest daughter," and all I could think was, well, here's a reminder of my glorious UN accomplishments. After staring at that cheerful family moment for what felt like hours, I summoned the courage to type my final farewell in our chat. "Thank you for teaching me to stand on my own, even in the cruelest way possible." I hit send with a tremor of nervous excitement, then proceeded to block their numbers and delete the chat like a dramatic film character. Suddenly, the screen went dark, and the silence felt lighter. For the first time, there were no expectations weighing on my shoulders, just sweet, terrifying freedom. Waking up before dawn the next morning was both liberating and confusing. With no job and no plan, I found myself at a crossroads. I could either spend my days grappling with self-doubt, proving everyone wrong, or start crafting a life that rendered their opinions obsolete. Coffee in hand, I flipped open my sketchbook and just drew a simple line, a mere outline of a small house. Little did I realize, that humble line was the first breadcrumb on a path I had yet to discover. As the weeks slid by like cold coffee left forgotten, rejection emails multiplied in my inbox. The city felt as frozen as my career ambitions, with Denver unable to shake off the recession's icy grip. One dreary afternoon, I found refuge in a small cafe called Harlan's Corner, the ambience as tired as I was, filled with dim lights and a scent of burnt espresso that clung to the air like a bad dream. I set up shop at a corner table, half-heartedly working on my laptop, while internally grappling with my rapidly fading sense of self-worth. Suddenly, an unexpected voice interrupted my pity party. "You're Maya Bennett, right? The engineer?" It came from the silver-haired, paint-stained owner of the cafe, his eyes twinkling with earnestness. I was caught off guard, muttering, "Used to be." With a knowing smile, he offered, "Could really use someone like you. My cafe is falling apart, and I've got about $1,000 left to fix it. Interested?" A grand total of $1,000. Barely enough for rent, but his hopeful charm got to me. "Yeah, I'm interested," I found myself saying, excitement bubbling underneath all the exhaustion. Those next few weeks were a whirlwind of paint, wood, and light fixtures as I transformed Harlan's Corner from drab to fab. I painted walls, rearranged furniture, and created an inviting layout that made the tiny cafe feel like a cozy oasis. Using reclaimed wood for the counter and hanging pendant lights gave the place new life, and when I finished, Harlan looked around in awe. "It feels alive again," he murmured, his eyes misty with gratitude. "You've got magic in your hands, kid." Just a week after the renovation, the local magazine spotlighted our beloved cafe with the headline, "A Forgotten Cafe Brought Back to Life by a Local Engineer," featuring a photo of me beaming behind the counter, paint splatters decorating my jeans. The next morning, my inbox was flooded with inquiries from people desperate for my newfound magic touch on their old businesses and homes. With just my sketchbook and a handful of tools, I said yes to every opportunity and soon found myself heading to Golden, a quaint town west of Denver. There, I was tasked with bringing an old brick house back to life for a retired veteran. Excitement surged through me as I realized I was finally starting to create my own destiny. The moment I arrived, I was greeted by Ethan Walker, a tall engineer with a presence that could rival a superhero. His rolled-up sleeves revealed arms dusted with cement, and his calm grey eyes reminded me of a winter afternoon. "You're the designer?" he asked. I nodded. "And you're the one making sure it doesn't collapse," he chuckled. A hint of camaraderie was born, and I knew right away we were going to get along splendidly. Days melted into weeks as we worked diligently side by side, measuring beams, sketching layouts, and debating the best design. Sometimes silence enveloped us like a cozy blanket as we lost ourselves in the rhythm of the work. One day, as I was in an artistic crouch perfecting a design, Ethan handed me a water bottle. "You forget the world when you're working," he said. Grinning, I replied, "That's the whole point." But it was his next words that lingered. "You look at a house like it has a soul." Oh, the feels. When the project wrapped up, Ethan suggested we celebrate with dinner at a charming restaurant near Sloan's Lake. Over warm bread and glasses of rich red wine, our conversation shifted from blueprints to life's heavier stuff. I opened up about losing my job and stepping away from my family. Instead of pity, Ethan offered me insight. "You don't need their approval, Maya. You've built something they can't touch." It felt revolutionary to be seen for who I truly was, not the version my family labeled, but the woman fighting her way toward her dreams. Then one day, out of the blue, Ethan called with a zany idea. "Ever thought about designing a home that generates its own energy?" he asked. My heart raced. That was the dream I buried years ago, the one in which my father branded me a risk-taker. "Yeah," I said, trying to play it cool, "I've thought about it." Ethan replied, "Then maybe it's time." Just like that, the eco-home project was born, and the adventure was about to skyrocket. Months later, we stumbled upon a stunning plot of land in Oregon, 5 acres with an ocean view that could steal anyone's breath. It belonged to George, a man whose kind eyes held untold stories of loss. "I planned to build a home here," he said wistfully, "but my wife passed before I could." When I shared our vision, He nodded and offered to lower the price to $75,000. You two will make it something worth living in, he said, and Ethan happily covered the rest. No strings attached. With a tent set up under the whispering pines, we brewed coffee before diving into our days of labor. Each morning, we battled against the rugged terrain, clearing stones and building the foundation with our own hands. I dubbed our creation Evergreen Cabin, 600 square feet of sustainable beauty, complete with solar panels, a rainwater system, and wood salvaged from a dismantled barn. Everything was built from the world's cast-offs, much like me, rebuilding from the scraps of life. Some days, I wanted to throw in the towel. My muscles screamed, and my fingers felt like icicles. But as I sat by the crackling fire each night, staring at the rising frame of our cabin, I realized this wasn't just about construction. It was a metaphor for resurgence. This is what it feels like to rebuild yourself, I mused, keeping the warmth of hope alive within me. This project transformed us both, one nail at a time. The cabin, a labor of love, finally stood stoically against the backdrop of the sea by month 10. Its pale wood glistened like it had its own sunshine, exuding a warmth that made it feel alive. I snapped a selfie, captioned it with the nonchalant claim of "built this myself," and posted it online. To my utter shock, my little joke went viral. Comments flooded in, igniting a sense of self-worth I'd long yearned for, people telling me I'd transformed pain into beauty. On a quiet May morning, the sun flickered gently through rustling trees, and lavender sweetened the air when tires screeched against gravel. Out popped Jessica, my sister, 2 years older, immaculate in her flowing white dress, but trembling like a leaf. "Dad, you need to come here now," she insisted, her voice quaking as it rode the wind. Heart pounding and gardening gloves in hand, I stepped down from the porch, curiosity piqued. Jess's eyes widened at the cabin, disbelief etched across her face. "You live here," she stammered, glancing around like she was spotting a unicorn. Her glances darted between the solar panels and the wildflowers, absorbing the life I had built from ashes. "They said you lost everything." I couldn't help but smirk. "Guess they were wrong," I replied. For a moment, her bravado melted away. "You built this with help," she said softly. "People who believed in you." Jessica's fingers brushed the cabin's walls, a look of defeat creeping in. "You have everything," she whispered as a gust played with her hair. My heart softened. We'd been raised under similar roofs with wildly different teachings. I had learned to thrive without love, while she was wrapped in its dependency. "Then stop living for them, Jess. Start living for you," I encouraged gently. She offered a shaky laugh in return. Easier said than done. The chilly silence settled until she confessed, "They're coming." Just like that, an SUV pulled up, and I could sense the impending storm. Dad climbed out first, his face flushed with disbelief and indignation. Mom trailed behind, visibly shaken. "Where did you get the money for this?" Dad growled, skepticism dripping from every word. My heart raced, but I stood my ground, engaging him head-on. "I built this from your words, Dad," I replied coolly. "All your criticisms and comparisons, that's what fueled me." His face twisted in confusion, trying to process my confidence. "We only wanted what's best for you," Mom quibbled, her voice trembling. I chuckled softly, knowing that was just a cover for their ideology. "No, you wanted what made you look best," I replied, unwavering. The air thickened with tension, the sound of crashing waves echoing in the backdrop. Dad's frustration intensified as he scanned the cabin as if seeking evidence of failure. "You did this to humiliate us," he accused. "No," I corrected calmly, "I did this to survive you." Just then, Ethan stepped out, wiping grease from his hands, a calm presence beside me. He offered my parents a polite nod, silently affirming my truth amidst the chaos brewing around us. A strange flicker flashed in my father's eyes for the first time ever, a mix of confusion, shame, and something I couldn't quite pinpoint. "Did you do all this for revenge?" he finally managed to ask, as if it would dethrone the truth. My shake of the head was vehement. Revenge? That would mean I still cared about his thoughts. I didn't. The teasing breeze slipped through the pines, carrying that signature lavender scent close to our heart, maybe even close enough to heal. Jessica stood nearby, her tears making her look more like a delicate flower wilting under the weight of the moment. Dad's shoulders sagged like he was carrying the weight of the world on them. When he finally said, "We were wrong," I felt a soft twist in my gut. Mom was already quietly weeping into her hands, her distress echoing in the air. I stayed rooted in my spot, remaining firm. "I don't need to forgive you to be free," I assured them calmly. "I already am." With that proclamation hanging in the air, they took their leave, the SUV disappearing down the gravel road into the depths of the forest. The silence that followed felt almost profound. I lingered on the porch, pulse racing, not from rage but from a sense of liberation. "You okay?" Ethan asked, draping his arm over my shoulders. I gazed towards the trees, where sunlight danced golden across our cabin walls. It finally struck me, and I nodded. Completely. The relief washed over me like a refreshing breeze, cleansed and rejuvenated. Then came the cream-colored envelope a week later, its anonymity sending a jolt through my nerves. My father's neat handwriting graced the front, but no return address peeked out. Inside lay a letter alongside a photo of our old house, a for-sale sign standing tall in the front yard. His shaky words hit home, "We loved you in the wrong way. Through fear, through comparison. We're starting over. And for the first time, we are proud of you." I puzzled over the letter, yet didn't shed a single tear or pen a response. Instead, I ventured into the fresh, pine-scented air, planting a young tree near the porch. It felt symbolic, a budding new beginning rooted in peace, nurturing something fresh to life. To my side, Ethan appeared, holding a small walnut box he had carved from the first tree chopped for our cabin. A simple wooden ring rested within. "Maya Bennett," he murmured, "will you keep building with me?" Through the tears that blended with laughter, I replied with a smile, "Only if we draw the blueprint together." As that sun dipped below the tree line that evening, I grabbed my journal and penned the final line. They gave her $150,000. They gave me silence, but that silence became my foundation. That wind weaving through the trees felt like a promise, one of liberation and strength. Sometimes revenge isn't about inflicting pain but about moving forward, letting those who doubted you witness your joy, no approval necessary. My parents may have gifted me silence, but it turned out to be a potent teacher about strength, boundaries, and the warmth of peace. If you've ever had anyone tell you that you wouldn't make it, my story serves as evidence that you can build a life from scratch, one no one can take from you. So, what would you have done in my shoes? Don't forget to drop a comment. If this struck a chord, hit subscribe or share it. We're all in this together.